I said, some people are calling on me to apologize for my prayer. And so I do have a statement. Here's my statement. I am not sorry. I do not apologize. And it was just, man, it was amazing. We're in the middle of Pride Month. Our church is packed. We have 7 services at our campuses. There's no place to sit. Our giving goes through the roof, and we baptize more people that month than ever.
Hey guys, Pastor Jeff here on the Brave Way podcast, and today joining me in studio is my good friend, Pastor Travis Johnson. We met last year at a conference with a group of guys, and for whatever reason, I really liked all the guys, but we just kind of connected. There was an authenticity about you that I really appreciated, and
I enjoyed it too.
What you're doing. You're pastoring in Mobile, Alabama. Tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're at, your family, and then we'll kind of launch from there.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would say this. I want everybody to go to heaven. Okay. But if you can't get to heaven, at least get to Mobile, because it is just, you got sweet tea, you got the beaches, you can be out fishing, 5 minutes, or you can be in the woods getting some deer.
Or recently, you can be in 9 inches of snow.
9 inches of snow. Who does that? So anyway, Jeff, man, great being with you.
Great
really
to have
good.
you.
Yeah, man.
I know you're up here for our Warrior Summit, which actually we're recording this day before that.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna be great tomorrow. So you've been pastoring in Mobile now 8 years.
Yeah,
is
8
that right?
years. 8 years, and we have campuses along the Gulf Coast. So, Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Foley, couple campuses in Mobile. We have a campus up near Memphis, and then our newest campus is in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, which we've been in Cambodia for a couple decades doing missions. And so got some really neat things happening there. But that's kind of the lay of the land for us.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about Cambodia, and then talk about what you're doing with this initiative with trees, because it's all over the place.
Yeah,
It's
kind of weird. Like, only recently has my beard turned gray. I didn't start out as Santa Claus, but about 13 years ago, we had a Coast Guard family in our small group in the church we were pastoring in Miami. It's Life Point Church, amazing place. And so we were trying to figure out how to help this Coast Guard family that was adopting a little girl from Ethiopia raise the money for the adoption. And so, I don't know, people were like car wash, and we kind of had a rule for all of our small groups. You don't take up offerings in the small group. So we're thinking of fundraisers we could do. So one of the guys said, hey, I sold Christmas trees over in Miami Beach, and I did pretty good. And I'm thinking, man, Miami Beach, people, they don't go to church. They're not really Christians, and a huge Jewish population. So I guess if you could do like Hanukkah bushes or something like that, then we could do Christmas trees in South Miami, which was culturally Catholic. And so we sold trees. We raised $25,000 that first year and had a great time. Miracles happened. We raised the amount for the adoption. Really significant leaders in our community came to Christ. It activated our volunteers. I remember one night I drove by the Christmas tree tent, like it was way after hours, like midnight. And there were a bunch of people in there giving salsa lessons, So they had found this different kind of community that wasn't happening in the regular flow of the church. Well, it was great, man. Our church grew. And so we said, hey, this is a thing. So we started an organization, 501c3. We called it Buy a Tree, Change a Life. We thought about calling it Buy a Tree, Save a Life, but that was like an overstatement, maybe, overpromise. Buy a Tree, Change a Life, that was doable. And this last year, we just passed giving $13 million away to help children globally and locally. And we're in about 23 different states, and it's been incredible, and it's just been awesome.
That's so neat. And so talk about Cambodia a little bit. I know you have a heart for Cambodia. You've been there many times.
So before we started Buy a Tree, Change a Life, every year I personally was trying to do a project to raise awareness and to raise money for the work in Cambodia. And I got going to Cambodia when I was a church planter. We had just barely been meeting in a movie theater. And Miami is not churched. Everybody's, either Christian or Catholic, but nobody goes to church. There aren't really mega churches. The only reason, and then those generally are Latino churches, Spanish speaking.
Okay.
So, figure 16% non-Hispanic Caucasian, 22% African American, and then everyone else is Latino. Half of the population is born outside of the United States. Very transient, high cost of living, and then relatively low wages because it's a service industry. Not so much now. Commerce, finance is coming up in Miami, but so we were out hustling. Um, I had our soundboard was on a TV tray in the movie theater. You know, so it was like pillar to post, kind of really
Yep.
duct taped together, and we were reaching people. It was awesome. So Dr. Fred Garman, who is executive director of People for Care and Learning, said, "Travis, you got to come with me to Cambodia." And I said, "Well, man, I'm broke. I can't do that." And he said, "Look, you come, I'll pay for it." And it was like he was like a drug dealer or something. He paid for the first one, and then I never stopped going. So every year since then, and so that's been forever. And then so I'm doing these projects, like I rode my bicycle across Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand in 7 days. So I was ranging between like 80 to 140, 137 miles a day. And for that, we were raising money to build houses in a build a city project. And there's children's homes. I just fell in love with it. We actually almost moved to Phnom Penh to start an international church, kind of reach expats. We had gotten connected into the government. And we thought we would do that while we're training Cambodian leaders to start churches. And we were that close. And then Dr. Fred was like, "I don't think you're supposed to do this. I don't want you going. I don't want you to not be my friend. But I think you're not supposed to do this." And so we didn't go, kind of brokenhearted. It was not malicious. He's like a father to me. But it was really, he was seeing something develop in me that needed to be here. So that's buy a tree, and a bunch of things happen. It really helped us to expand our network and our bandwidth, and then we end up taking over People for Care and Learning when he retired. And so that's been incredible. And so I'll take about 20 pastors over there in about a week from now, and we'll go to Parliament. We know all the leaders. Is it really kind of crazy? Kelly and I actually got like a humanitarian medal from the vice prime minister of Cambodia a few years back. So
Wow.
God's given us favor there. We have orphanages, schools, churches, farms. Like I'm a cattle rancher in Cambodia. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 head of cattle that will help fund church planting there. We have restaurants. We have a cafe that's nicer than any Starbucks you've been in there.
Really?
Some of that came because we weren't allowed to start churches when we started. So we would start a school and evangelize kids, start a restaurant, evangelize the workers, hold a church service in the restaurant, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And how many years now have you been in Cambodia?
Well, I've been the executive director for People for Care and Learning for 8.5 years.
Okay.
But I've probably been going close to 20 years, maybe like 17, 18 years.
And so have a lot of people from your church then traveled with you?
We've taken them over.
Yeah.
We have our Buy a Tree, Change a Life sites. We take the pastors over too. So it's like a big network. We had about 150, 160 pastors in DC last year for March for Life, and we had our Celebrate Life Gala there.
Right.
We do that at different places each year. This year I'll be at University of Florida. 2 years ago I was at University of Georgia, took everybody through the football stadium. But we're always at one of our churches, one of our Buy a Tree churches, and try and get into like a high performing church / Buy a Tree situation. So we have some sites that raised $850,000 in a couple of weeks. Wow. Some 150, some 30, some 6,000, so, but we're trying to activate the church into, missions and mobilizing volunteers. So we probably have about 6,000 volunteers every Christmas on these sites. And then we get them all together and just say thank you. So we'll do stuff like if the site is performing, high, then we'll try and get the senior pastor and the site director over so they can go meet the kids that they're funding. And it's been transformative. Takam Village. Okay, Cambodia is 98% Buddhist. When we started, it was 99% Buddhist. So you really don't see a lot of Christians at all. And it's all of our leaders are first generation Christians. A lot of our leaders came up out of our children's home. Our commitment to our kids in our children's home is, we'll pay for their get them through high school, and then pay for whatever college they get accepted into. And then once we've had, 15 years of 18 years of discipleship and mentoring and loving them,
Yeah.
being family, then we want to keep them. They become our leaders, our youth pastors, our pastors.
Got it.
It's been awesome, man. You got to go with me sometime.
I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to go. You're always inviting me to travel. I think you invited me to go to Greece with you later this year and
Oh yeah,
walk around. I want to do
absolutely.
that too. So
Absolutely.
you're quite the traveler. Let's shift gears just a little bit, because you're also part of the National Faith and Advisory Board. I think you have been for about the last 5-6 years, something like that. So you've had a very eventful, last 6 months, really last couple of weeks. Talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, so I got involved in National Faith Advisory Board, really kind of coming, when President Trump was running for that 2020 election. And I had been to some events, just like going. And then Christianity Today, I'm assuming I could talk about this.
You can talk about whatever you want.
Christianity Today had run an article talking to Christians that were voting for President Trump. And they said, remember who you are and who you serve. And it was like this real shaming kind of, you can't vote really for the only pro-life person running for office. Somehow that was wrong. And I mean, just being honest, I'm like triggered by this article. I'm like, man, where's Christianity Today? What's this about? And then there was a response. It was written to it. And I believe Jensen Franklin had written it. And then I took it and distributed it for signatures. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm 100% in. I feel like before that, I was kind of, it was like the peacetime church.
Yeah.
And then that was right then was probably when I was becoming a wartime pastor. I'm just going, it's not enough for me just to, disciple my people in the confines of the church. And we actually were under attack, and we're not just going to, it was just going to be a more radical, aggressive approach. And I'm, like Brave Church, right?
Same.
Yeah. So then I was like, I'm all in, burn the ships, burn the bridges. We're all in. And I just started getting involved. And then in 2023, I was praying a prayer. I'm more involved at this point. In 2023, I'm praying a prayer in my city, invocation at city council. And it happened to be Pride Month. And I prayed, I said, and Lord, especially put a hedge of protection around our children who are being targeted by ideologies in our schools, parks, libraries, and online. And then that was like this avalanche of, like AL.com came out and said that some people were saying my prayer was anti-LGBTQ, because you can say stuff like that as long as you say, some people are saying, like you. Anyway, so
you weren't using the politically correct language.
Yeah, but I wasn't targeting anybody. No, even if I had, it's fine. That. Even if I had, dude, our kids are under attack, right? But I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I'm not above it, right? So then, like, there's all these articles, like 8 or 9 articles, and I'm getting, my wife got doxxed. Our family got doxxed. Pictures of our kids. My wife's salary is being pushed online. There's this journalist for a gay magazine that did that, just because I prayed a prayer in city council. So I shared, with my church. I was like, I've got an announcement I'm going to make. And so I stood up in the pulpit as I was getting ready to preach. And I said, some people are calling on me to apologize for my prayer. And so I do have a statement. Here's my statement. I am not sorry. I do not apologize. And it was just, man, it was amazing. We're in the middle of Pride Month. Our church is packed. We have 7 services at our campuses. There's no place to sit. Our giving goes through the roof, and we baptize more people that month than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was already just like ticked off, but now I'm like invigorated. So it was just from then on, it was like pedal to the metal. Well, because of that pressure, then NFAB started leaning in more to me, and I'm leaning in more to NFAB, and I'm finding this really great encouragement from them. And, sometimes you need somebody to say, I believe in you, and I'm in the middle of a fight. I'm in the middle of a battlefield, and nobody can do that but me. Right. So I just felt very strengthened and encouraged. And I think that's when I said, hey, whatever it is that you're doing, I'm doing. And if there's a spot for me, I'm there, unless like my son has a soccer game, right? Other than that, I'm in. And so, man, we just started going. And so from 23 till now, just wide open. There's some other things, but that was like what really pushed. And then from then, I mean, there's just been some pretty exceptional moments that I was going, well, I didn't have that on my bingo card, you know?
Talk about some of them. I mean, I'm aware of some of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. I can't remember if it was 23 or 24. It was either late 23 or early 24. You know, I'm with NFAB, and, you know, I'm with President Trump the night that he's arrested in DC, you know, like that kind of stuff. And man, he's so really strong, you know, seeing him walk in after that, it's like nothing phased him, you know. So I'm actually like a little bit encouraged by his resilience, but then also that he would take time to be with pastors on a time like that, you know, let me know that, you know, he values the church, he values the voice of the ministers, and he really does. And then, you know, also kind of, you know, being down in that too. But yeah, some things like that. And, you know, I think that's where I was going, wow, there's a lot of pastors that aren't involved in politics because they think it's distasteful or they should stay in their lane. And man, a lot of that stuff just began to really organize in my mind. I started thinking things like this, like if you don't get involved in politics, politics will get involved in you. I've also started thinking that, hey, we get involved in business, in humanitarian work, hospitals. The church has built more hospitals than anybody.
Right.
Schools, we do that, education, humanitarian work, everything. Which makes sense because the first directive that we have is to go and take dominion over the earth, to subdue it, to rule over it, actually to govern it.
Yes.
So then why would we?
Where do you think that comes from? Where people, because I would even say, I mean, even growing up in the church, going to seminary, being a pastor. I mean, there's this. I don't know if I was ever taught it, or if I was taught it, it was more of the idea of, hey, share Christ, share the cross, share the gospel, grow people up in the faith, teach the word, do your thing. The government's out there, but what I discovered, I mean, 2020 and then 2021, all of a sudden it's like, if you don't address the issues that people are dealing with, and we're not talking about those, and we're not being loving, we're not being caring, and all those things are going to come act upon us. Right. And you know, for me, it wasn't a deal of right versus left anymore. It was right versus wrong. It was evil standing right at our doorstep, and to be silent when evil's right at your doorstep is to not do anything. I know that's been some of your journey as well as a pastor and all that. But I guarantee, you know, there's pastors in your area or people that know you that would say, come on, Pastor. I mean, you don't have to be involved. And don't you understand that Donald Trump, he may or may not be a Christian. If he is, he may not be all that. Like, how can you stand there and talk about these kind of things? Why not just disciple your church? And your response is what?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have had that idea. But first, I would think, well, thank God that somebody recognized that our rights are inalienable and given by God. And that's the founding of our country. So we never separated our relationship with the Lord from the founding of our country. So God is at the very foundation of who America is. If the founders had divorced their faith from politics, that would be crazy. Secondly, if logically, how does it even work? Like if you, me, if the people that we love, that love the Lord, love Jesus, are in the Word of God, if they remove themselves from political activities, there's a vacuum and somebody's going to fill it, and it's not going to be people like them.
Exactly.
It's a bad idea. It's a really bad idea, because then you can't complain about what you got if you have given it up. And so, yeah, Christians need to be on the school board. By the way, Christians' parents at school boards are not terrorists. I'm just putting that out there. This is crazy. That's just what happened. We have Trinde Aragua, or however you say that, taking over. This is like
right here in
Denver,
Colorado.
right? Is it Denver or so doing that? But then we are labeling 74-year-old grandmothers who are praying in front of Planned Parenthood as domestic terrorists. Are you kidding me? It's crazy. So when we remove ourselves, then we end up with the FACE Act. And we end up with nonsense like that. We end up with a bunch of gender indoctrinating content being, you know, focused on fourth graders. And then there are some really nice people in pulpits that are much more, apparently more mature than I am and more polite than I am. They want to address those things in the pulpit. And maybe that makes them a statesman or something, but it doesn't help the kids. It doesn't help the families. And so I just decided, no, I'm all in. I'm all in. And so it was like 2020. You said, how was it? You said that in 2020.
I just said everything changed for me in
Yeah,
2020.
I say radicalized. Like I
Yeah.
got radicalized in 2020.
Because I realize when I'm getting ready to go to the church in October, and I'm praying with my wife before I leave, but our prayers look something like this: Lord, if I get arrested today, be with my wife and my kids, let them know I'm going to come back, and all this stuff. And I'm like, what in the world kind of world am I living in? Like, and if I'm just going to sit by silently when I'm considered being rude because I'm going to open our doors and have church, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
And I'm completely
Right.
done with that. And I'm not going to ever close our doors again unless the Lord has us for a season and we make that decision. Nobody's going to infringe that upon us. And so I think for me, that's what started changing.
Right.
Because I started realizing like we've been quiet for so long. And I would tell you this too. I mean, you used the word wartime pastor. That's the way I would describe it.
Right.
I was the most alive I think I've ever been during that season too, because it was almost like my resolve was so strong. I feel the same way now. I mean, and regardless of which way the election went, and I'm glad it went the way that it did, but I'm like, we're into taking ground now, and we would have been into taking ground if it would have gone the other way. But I'm done just sitting back and just waiting for things to happen, and hopefully we'll pray it out. And I'm like, no, let's pray and let's be biblical and let's do all this, but let's call a spade, and let's be engaged in our culture. Because if we're not, then we're really not making disciples. We're just talking platitudes from the pulpit.
Yeah, every now and then I'll have somebody say, Pastor, you know, we shouldn't be in all of the politics. You know, this can run people off. I'm like, you know, when we were going into COVID, we barely had 2 campuses. Really, we had 1 campus until right before COVID. And now we have 5 campuses. And our church is a heck of a lot bigger. If one person leaves, we've got 10 people coming in the door. And, you know, actually, you know, maybe half the problem here is that the church is not being pruned. The church is not being disciplined. I'm not talking about just being discipled, but I'm talking about correction in the church.
Yes.
That you cannot be pro-abortion and be a Christian. You can't.
It's incongruent.
It's an oxymoron. Yeah, it does not. That doesn't work. But how many churches never even hear their pastor talk about the sanctity of life? 2020, I sat down with our staff, and in our staff meetings, we had always been doing book studies, always. And when I say book studies, I don't mean like a book in the Bible. I'm talking we take a leadership book, and everybody's doing book reviews, and we talk about it, and that's just a part of our staff meeting. But in 2020, I just swept all the leadership books off, and I said, listen, guys, you know how I preach on Sundays. And you're going to preach like that in kids, in students, in middle school, in young adults, everywhere. We're bringing this across the board. Listen, this LGBTQ agenda, if that wolf carries off one of our 13-year-olds, it better be over the bleeding body of a pastor laying in the doorway of the sheep pen.
That cares enough about it. Yeah.
Our first book, Owen Strand, Wokeness and Christianity, which Owen has been, I mean, just what a great voice. And it was, you know, we just went right through them, and we just working through that. And then we're getting into the scriptures, and we're saying, I just need you to know this because the scriptures call us to tear down every single vain imagination that exalts itself above the name of Jesus. It's not just stand our ground. It's to take that ideology, pull it out, look at it, show everybody, say, look at this right here. And then you explain why this opposes God. We're not going to abandon a 15-year-old boy to a rainbow emoji on an Instagram account without him knowing what the Bible has to say about it.
Amen.
And then what I found out is the harder we pressed in with the gospel, the more people were radically saved. And I think that was like I told you I'm doing a book, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't really told anybody. This is probably the first time I say it out loud, but the book is called Unembarrassed of Jesus. And it's the idea is that the closer, Peter following Jesus at a distance caused him to deny Christ, but following Jesus closely helps you to change the world. And so what I found out is that the closer you call people to Jesus, the bolder you preach the gospel in the power of the Holy Spirit, then people will turn the world over. Like I'm thinking about this little group of. Am I talking too much?
No, man.
Okay, so I'm talking to. I'm watching this group of like young men come up in our student ministry, and we have a real imaginative name for our student ministry. It's just pathway students, right? But I call these kids the Jesus Revolution kids. Dallas Davis comes to youth camp. Somebody invited him to youth camp. He spent one night at camp. The camp was full. He slept on the floor. Has a radical experience with Jesus. He comes to my office the next day, no appointment, just walks in, and he looks like Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
Right? And he just tells me his story. He plays soccer. He just, he's a great kid, but got people in a lot of trouble. I'll tell his story because he's told it publicly, but he was selling weed, but you just want to be around this kid. Whatever it was he was doing in the world, I mean, he's like 10 times more following Christ. And he's got packs of kids following him. So he's going down to the altar during worshiping, and there's all these kids coming. And he's organizing, I don't even know where he gets this, Jericho marches around his school before school opens. First 7 days marching around just praying for God to give revival to his school.
Mm.
And then he's got like 120 kids marching around the school, this high school. And they're like jocks and cheerleaders and mathletes and geeks and everybody. And so it was like there's this positive peer pressure in the school.
Love that.
And then he comes to me, he's like, Pastor, I want to do like a worship and testimony night at school. I want to put it in the auditorium. Kids that have those ideas.
Yeah, right.
And that was the last thing I heard until I saw the poster for it. And there's like 700 kids there. And they have completely student-led worship. He preaches. He didn't have pastor baptizing. He just baptized like 70 people.
I love it.
And it was just,
this next generation, there's just something special. The
wide open.
The Lord's doing something great. And I love that.
Nobody wants, look, for us to, revival is like fresh bread, but when you're living off a 20-year-old bread that used to be fresh, that like we don't need to try and imitate that. Like this generation, they're going through stuff we never did.
100%.
Even think about, like, did you ever get busted with like a love note or something your parents got or a teacher got it?
Oh, I'm sure I did, yeah.
But our kids, if we take their phone, we have access to everything they've written. You right?
Yeah.
We didn't have that. Now they have temptations we never had.
Yep.
Everything's so quick. But man, they're smart and they can do so much. So anyway, watching these kids radicalize has been incredible. And I think like Junior Muhabao, these great football player, just seeing all of that happen. And I don't know that would have happened with the 2017 Travis. And then that fight that I got in 2020 prepared me for 2023. And then I could go right on down the list. And to me, it feels now, if I'm going to say free, what's happening right, I feel free, completely free. Every now and then I'll stand up in the pulpit and say, hey man, I just joined this club. It's called the I Don't Give a Rip Foundation, and I'm the CEO. I just don't care. And I'm going to bring the gospel. But I think God's prepared me for this now, and probably you as well. To me, it feels like in 2025, there's like a window of opportunity over the church for revival. I don't think it's a guarantee, but it feels like the conditions are there.
The Lord's moving.
Families in style. A lot of things are back in style. The conditions are there. People are going, what we just did, didn't work. There's got to be more. In the church, there's nobody poised better than the church. We just have to speak.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Well, I also want to shift gears too, talk about your family, because you mentioned it earlier. I know you have 3 children, 2 daughters at college at ORU, a son that's a soccer player. But even when you're doing the different things you're doing around the country, you're traveling a lot. You're like, but I'm not going to miss my son's soccer game.
Yeah.
You prioritize your wife, your kids, your family. Talk about why that's been so important, why that's foundational, and why they're such a support to you.
Yeah, what's better? What's better than family, And Kelly and I have been married 25 years. And, I like to say my family's my first church. Um, things get, raising kids is busy. I forget who said this, but the time your kids need you the most is when you have the least time, when you're having to earn
Hmm.
money and provide for them. It's almost like a tension that God put there because you are called to provide for your family,
Right.
right? So if you don't work to spend time with your kids, you're not a good father, right? That's not a good thing if you're not providing for them. You're as much as providing, you're teaching them,
You're living with
right?
them. You're
Right.
modeling.
So those pieces are really important. But then too, man, I love my kids. I love being around them. We had some friends that had kids really close together, and they kind of ran like a tribe. And I was like, I want to do that. So our kids are all probably just under 2 years apart.
Okay.
So that's been fun. And our caboose is right there. He's a junior in high school, and that's been great. I had a deal in Dubai one time, a meeting that I had to get to, and Courtney, my oldest, she was on the homecoming court. And so I went to Dubai. I was only there for like 32 hours because I need to get back to
Yep.
walk her out on homecoming, which was, that was pretty awesome. I was just completely sleep deprived. But for her, it meant a lot. And for me,
Yep.
it meant a lot, you know?
That's awesome.
So to me, and what does it matter what you build, if you lose that? And I've watched a lot of my friends who are pastors' kids
Mm-hmm.
really struggle.
Yep.
And even when you're doing it, when you're giving it everything you have,
It's a burden.
having kids in the church, it's a
Mhm.
real privilege, right? But it's also a thing, and your kids have different personalities. Like if Courtney's watching this, right? With the attention, the spotlight, she'd be like, give it to me. She's like, bring it. And, my other kids are a little more low key cool,
Yep.
and everybody has a different personality. They didn't ask for this, but it's a privilege to be, and I'm a pastor's kid too.
I didn't
So
know that.
yeah, I'm a pastor's kid. My dad, best pastor in the world was my dad. So, I try and hit that as good as I can, but for, I really do love pastors' families. It's a real wonderful thing to be raised in the house of the Lord, but it also does
Amen.
it comes with some challenges. Our kids are there earlier than everybody else. They're there at everything. Navigating those pieces
Yeah.
is pretty good. You have some really wonderful experiences, and you also see some stuff too.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. So this year, 2025, I mean,
Yeah.
what are you most looking forward to?
Well, we've opened all these campuses. We're finishing a new auditorium at our airport campus. It's beautiful. I'm really excited about that. And so I'm looking forward to kind of sitting on my hands and letting our campuses develop.
Mm.
Um, when I go to Cambodia, we're dedicating 6 new church buildings.
Wow.
So that is taking on a life of its own. It's incredible. I think did I mention that Cambodia is 98% Buddhist?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Takam Village, 50% of Takam Village is Christian.
Wow.
So we're seeing massive gains, right? And a lot of really great things happening. We have about 12 or 1,300 kids in our schools. That stuff is going really great. So I'm looking for that. At 51, I'm trying to raise up more sons and daughters in the faith. So I really feel that fatherly vibe trying to come in,
I love that.
So I'm wanting to stretch those legs even more. And, I think it's going to be our best year. I'm pretty sure. It feels like it's going to be our best year. So, there's a few other areas I'm trying to get on into. We have some partnerships that are happening with Buy a Tree, Change a Life, with some national organizations that are coming on with us. I think that Buy a Tree, Change a Life is going to be massive. I think that might be one of the most impactful things we do. The relationships that have come out of that have been pretty incredible. And so I'm praying for great things. My wife runs that. And so I'm kind of like involved in it by way of influence.
Yep.
But yeah, just seeing that continue to develop, finish out this book. And I think I'm going to get to do some more of that. I'm stretching my legs in media a little bit more.
I know you are.
My social media engagement is a little bit more. And so I'm really looking forward to this year.
That's awesome.
Looking forward to getting you down to Mobile.
I want to come. I want to come.
It's not mobile. It's Mobile.
Mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to go to the White House with you sometime too.
Let's go, man. Let's go. We got to do that sooner rather than later. Actually thinking about bringing some groups together in DC and doing some tours of more than just the White House and share about the Christian faith
Yeah, that's awesome.
of the United States. And then, not have everything programmed so that the guys, like we'll have some really great guys that we have time to connect with each other
Yeah.
too, as well as, working with the faith office and some of that.
Love it. Love it.
I would love that, man. Let's make that happen
Let's do
soon,
it.
for sure.
Well, bro, you're a great brother. Thanks for coming on our podcast. Thanks for coming to Warrior Summit. So excited for what you're going to be presenting tomorrow, and just look forward to getting to know you.
Man,
And
Brave Church is off the chain, man. Really excited. Thankful for your life and your voice. Really encouraging, strengthening. The church needs more Pastor Jeffs, more brave Pastor Jeffs. It's contagious. Let me say this one last thing. Okay. When Peter failed and he comes back, Jesus re-embraces him. He goes to the upper room. Holy Spirit gets a hold of him. It didn't all just happen. Everybody didn't just decide to make it happen. Peter stood up and preached. And when he stood up, the other 11 stood up and 3,000 were saved.
Amen.
And I'm just believing that the work God's doing in your life is going to be exponentially bigger than just Jeff. It's going to be the people that you inspire, the people that your people are reaching. I'm just praying that God will bless with just an exponential blessing and a really great legacy for you guys this year.
I received that. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Until I see you next time, know this from my heart to yours that you are loved.